So please, let's go. If you remember, we have talked about SR latch, and then we built something like this. This is our SR latch, a clocked SR latch. Okay. Still a quiz, yeah. It's bad that I cannot limit the time. I put 10 minutes, but it's not enforced. You can continue, yeah. After it's finished, you can continue. It's the brightest space. After the time is finished, you can still continue. But it had only 10 minutes. Anyhow, let's continue. Please pay attention here. Submit your quiz. So this is clocked SR latch. Then we talked that we are going to build a counter. For this counter, it was good that if we use 4 of them for each digit, and then to make it count, we have added an incrementer. But there was a problem here. I guess, what was your name? Ben. And Ben mentioned that there is a problem. There is a problem of transparency. It means that when we have clock, then as long as this clock is high, the output goes there and it will be incremented. And again, so it will be incremented again and again and again until the clock is down. So it's not good. We just want to have one count with each clock, not continuously incrementing. So we talked about it, and then we use this idea of interlocked door, that you have a door going to a room, and then this door is closed, the next door is open, and the person goes inside, and when it goes inside, this door is closed. After this door is closed, the other door opens, and the person goes there. And with this method, the hot air doesn't coming out, or the cold air doesn't go inside the building. So we use the same idea. Okay, what do? We build a master, a slave D flip-flop. We had D flip-flop. Now we put 2 of them together, and one of them would be the master, the other would be the slave. And we complement the clock for the slave. We use a clock for master, and we complement it for the slave. So what happens actually when we have a clock? When we have a clock with the in the active clock, it works. So whatever we have in D will be here, come here. But at that time, the clock for the next D flip-flop is 0. So it doesn't work. So the data remains here. The data is here. It doesn't move out. And it doesn't make the problem that we have talked, because the data hasn't gone out. So it comes back to the incrementer, and then it increments again. So the data is here, in the middle, not in the output. So the data is there. Then the clock goes down. When the clock goes down, this clock is complemented. So here it is 1. The clock is 1 here. And this works. So this would be our next D flip-flop, the slave flip-flop, which works now. And now the data comes here. And it's good, because when the data comes here, if you look at again this circuit, if instead of just a D flip-flop, we had a master slave D flip-flop, And for example, I told you that we have 5 at the output. 5 was 4 and 1. 1, 0, 1, 0. This is 5. When we have 5 at the output, so this goes here. So we have 5 at the input of the incrementer. So it will be incremented, and now we have 6 here. So this is 5 input. The output would be 6. 6 is 4 and 2. 4 and 2. 0, 1, 1, 0. But this doesn't see any clock. When the clock comes, this will go to the middle stage, in the master, and they will be somewhere in the between. The 6 is here, but it doesn't go out. So the 6 is here. And then the clock goes down, the 6 will appear here, and only the 6 is happier. It's not going to 7, 8, 9, 10 as we had before. Because before, as long as the clock is high, it will be incremented and then again fed back again, and then incremented, fed back again, and so on. But here, it stops at the middle, and then in the next clock level, which is 0, then this will appear here. And now when 6 appears here, it goes here, and 7 is here. But 7 doesn't go inside because now clock is 0. Clock is 0 and it doesn't go inside. So this is how it happens. You see? So we have put a master, a slave D flip-flop to solve the problem of transparency. So it is not transparent any longer. At one level of the clock, it brings the data inside, but it doesn't go to output. At the next half of the clock, which the level, for example, is 0, then this middle data goes to output. Master, a slave. Okay? So this is a good idea of building a non-transparent flip-flop. So we have solved the problem. Now the counter is like that. As you could see, we have master-slave flip-flops, and we connect the output to the input of the counter, and the output of the counter goes to D, something like that. And then with each clock, when we put clock, it is 1, then the incremented value comes forward to here, to this part, and it stays there as long as the clock is 1. When the clock goes to 0, at this time, this will appear at the output, and so on. Okay? And this is a very good thing that we have done. For example, if I told you, if the clock is 1, data is coming here. When clock is 0, data goes there. And let me write something. This is the clock. This is clock. And this is data. For example, data is 0. Then data becomes 1 here. Then data becomes 0. Then data becomes 1. And then let's say data becomes 0 again, and so on. So if you look at this diagram, at this point, we have a clock. Clock is 1, and D is 0. D is 0, clock is 1. So this comes over here. We have 0 here now. And this 0 doesn't go inside because clock is 1, and therefore this is 0. So the clock for the slave is 0, and nothing goes inside. Then at this time, clock becomes 0. When clock becomes zero, for example, with orange, clock becomes zero. D is still zero. You see, D is still zero. Clock becomes zero. When clock becomes zero, then this will be masked. This master flip-flop doesn't work. But here the clock becomes 1. Now the clock for the slave is 1, and we have 0 at the input, so 0 goes to the output. And we have 0 at the output. You see, before clock going high, D becomes 1 here. So at this time, D becomes 1. Okay, D becomes 1. So let's write. Oh, it's not coming. It's green. So D becomes 1 now, but the clock is still 0. You see, D becomes 1. D becomes 1 here, but the clock is still 0. So D becomes 1, clock is still 0. So the clock is 0, it means that the master flip-flop doesn't do anything. So D is 1, but nothing happens. D is still there, doesn't go inside. And the slave flip-flop also, even if its clock is 1, even if clock is 1, since the input hasn't changed, so nothing changed in the output. So it's still there. Until we have 1 again in the clock. So let's say, for example, with which color do we use? Dark red. Okay. At this time, D is 1, and clock becomes 1 here. So clock becomes 1, D is still 1. So the master works, data will appear here. So data became 1. So data is appeared here, and the clock not is 0. So a slave doesn't do anything. Still there until the clock goes down. Oh no, sorry. Before the clock getting low, before the clock becomes 0, we see, here is the problem. No, not problem. We see D became 0. D became 0, and clock is still 1. Okay? So it means that the master works. Before clock became 0, the master works. So at this time, D became 0, for example, with black. D became 0, but clock is still 1. So it will make the output of master 0. So now we have 0 here, and the clock not is 0, so the slave doesn't work until the clock goes low here. The clock goes low. When the clock goes low, we use purple. When the clock goes low now, the clock becomes 0, but the D is still 0. So, and we have 0 at the input of the slave. This 0 appears at the output. You see what happened? D became 1 and then became 0, but we didn't see the effect of D becoming 1 to the output. Why? Because during the time that D became 0, the clock was high. So the clock was high. It was a transparency here in the master. So it went inside, but it is still there until the next clock comes. Okay? Or if we want something working good as we expected, it is not something that I guess we did it by plan. It is some kind of timing mismatch, and it is not good. So if you want to the master slave works well, you shouldn't change the data during the high level of the clock. So you shouldn't change that. The data should still remains there. Remember this when I am going to talk about edge. Remember this. So we have built something that it is not transparent, but still there is something there. If the data changes when we have we still have the clock high. Okay, just remember that. So, yes.
In the last slide, you mentioned transparency. What is that?
The transparency is for the master. The master is just a D flip-flop. D flip-flop has transparency. To solve that, we built a master slave, so we solved that problem. Because in the first half of the clock, this flip-flop works. In the next half of the clock, the other flip-flop works, and it makes the whole design as a non-transparent. So it's good. But again, I am telling you, as long as the clock is high, the master works. It's transparent because the clock is on and it works. So if you change the data inside the clock period, inside the clock being 1, then it means that the data goes through. And maybe it is not what you planned for. It is something, I guess, some kind of mismatch, some kind of bad design. Okay?
Is it because the clock is hiding the data? For example, when
it's not hiding actually. It's letting it go through.
Well, like if the master is working with 1,
okay,
and then it becomes 0, so the slave doesn't work. So it's not transparent. So they're not connected
yes.
to each other.
What I was telling you, that's correct. So as long as we have something like this, we have something like here, clock data is 0, clock goes high, and then the master works, the 0 comes in the middle, and then the clock goes low, then the 0 in the middle goes output. So this is good. We somehow solve the transparency problem. It doesn't go through to all the levels, as long as even if the clock is high, it doesn't go through. Okay, so that's good. But still, this part is a D flip-flop. So still, this is transparent. So if during the high level of clock you change the input, it goes inside. It comes here. So which is not good actually, because we wanted to have the data coming inside, then we do something with that data, and then the next data goes inside, like the incrementer. But this is not good. Yes?
So we don't want to change the data of the master when the clock is high.
Yes.
The state of the master.
The master, it will be changed, and then when the clock goes low, it will appear in the output, and it's not good. In our design, we don't have that problem, because let's go to this design. Is this design? In this design, we don't have this problem, because you see, because the input of the master is coming from here, and it is not changed during the clock. It only changes after the clock gets low. So this doesn't happen in this design. This design is very good. It's working perfect. Counting 5, 6, 7, 8 goes up very good. With each clock, it goes high. I was telling you, if the input of the flip-flop of this one changes during the clock, that's not good. So you shouldn't do that. And we will solve this also later. We will talk about this later. But for the time being, the master-slave flip-flop is good, as long as you design somehow the input doesn't change during the high level of the clock. Since it is somehow working at these positions when the clock goes from 0 to 1, we can put this here. This means that edge of the clock, the triangle, edge. It means that it works with a transition from 0 to 1. And when we put circle here, then it means transition from 1 to 0 for that. Okay? But again, I tell you now, then I will explain later, this is not actually perfectly correct. If we would like to talk religiously, very precise, it is not edge. It is a still level. As long as the clock is 1, this will somehow changing, and it is not good if you change the data during the high level of the clock. But if you design somehow that the data doesn't change, then it is good. We can say that this flip-flop works only at the rising edge of the clock, of the transition from 0 to 1. So that's good if the data doesn't change. But again, if we would like to talk precisely, it is not correct. We will see later. And maybe the better symbol would be, okay, if no change in the middle, so it is good. But if there is a change, I didn't have the symbol here. Let me show you the symbol, but again come back here. Okay, the better symbol for that is this. This is the better symbol. Instead of putting a triangle, which means the edge, we put some kind of level, but showing the transition, that it works in the transition period. Okay, so that's a better symbol, but for the time being, we just use this if the data doesn't change. Okay. Yes? I guess I talked about edge last time. No? Edge and level? No? I didn't? So, okay. That question we can mask it. So post in the discussion, so I will mask it. What was the question? You remember? It's okay. But you knew that the correct answer. You didn't know what is rising edge, but you knew that when the clock is high, it changed. So you could pick the correct answer. But you didn't know the why the rising edge is not correct. Yes? Okay. Give me post it in the discussion. I will take it out. We built D flip-flop. It was good. And then we built master-slave. But what if we still want the SR functionality? Do you remember SR functionality? With SR, we had S, when S is 1, R is 0, the output is set. When S is 0, R is 1, the output is reset. Remember that? SR. So it was good. It was some kind of functionality that we could use to set or reset the output, and we want that. But again, there was a problem with that. What was the problem with that SR? So we changed it to D flip-flop.
If both S and R are 1, we can.
Very good. It was an invalid state, so it was not good. So there was still a problem with SR. Because of that, we went to D flip-flop. We put SR with an inverter for the inputs, and we built D. Now, I am going back to SR. I would like to build something with SR functionality, but solving the problem of them becoming one at the same time. Okay? So what to do? We build a JK flip-flop. J is jump, K is kill. We build a JK flip-flop, jump kill flip-flop. And it will have some kind of SR functionality. Let's see what do we do. So this is SR. Remember? This is a clocked master slave SR, not D. In the previous slide we had D, but here it is SR. So we have S, we have R. If both of them are 0, we in the clock cycle at the high level of clock, the data S is 0, R is 0, so the Q will still remain as it was before. At the lower level, again, the Q still remains as it was before. But if S is 1, R is 0, at the high level of clock, the Q here becomes 1, sets, but it doesn't go inside until the clock gets low, then it goes outside. So it's good. We have an SR master slave flip-flop. But still, if both of them are 1, is not good. So what to do? So if both of them are 1, is not good. We should somehow avoid this situation. How to do that? Okay, let me say you, if Q is 1, in the normal operation, if Q is 1, then Q bar is 0, and it means that it is in a set state. So if Q is 1, then if again we have a 1 coming to S, shouldn't do anything, because it's already Q is 1. Why, if we put S as 1 and R as 0, it shouldn't do anything. So if we mask the set input, let me go back there. If we mask the S input with Q bar, because Q bar is now 0, if I connect this to this AND gate, then when Q is 1, Q bar is 0. And if Q bar is 0 and coming to this AND, whatever you put for S, it is 1, doesn't work. It's already set. So why do we need to put again a 1 there? So we masked it. With the same statement, we can talk about the R. If the Q is 0, if the Q is 0, if the Q is 0, then Q bar is 1, and then it doesn't mean like a Q is 0, the Q bar is 1. It doesn't mean to reset it again because it's already reset. So we can mask it with Q. We put Q to the input of the AND gate. So again, if R coming, doesn't change anything. So still, if you look at this circuit, it works. Whenever we want to set it, we put S1, R0, we set it. If the Q is 0, it becomes 1. If the Q is 1, it doesn't do anything. So it's good. If we want to reset it, we put R as 1 and S as 0. If the Q is 1, it will reset it. Because the Q is 1, the Q is 1, and then this 1 coming here, the R goes inside and it will reset it as we have talked about it before. Okay? And what if the Q is already 0? So it's still 0. So this is working. Do you agree? This is working. We can set it, we can reset it. If we put S and R, both of them 0, the data still remains there, because both of them would become 0. Because either it is Q, either it is 1 or 0. If Q is 1, this one is masked. If the Q is 0, this one is masked. So whatever it is, they are 0 at the output, and we have put 0, 0 at the input, so still 0, 0, we get 0, 0, and the data still remains there. Okay? Do you follow? Yes.
So the Q negation gets put into the AND with the S.
With the S.
Okay.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yes, exactly. Okay, like this. So I showed you this still works. Even with my masking, it still works, because either we want to set, it works. Either we want to reset, it works. Either we want to make it as it was before 0, 0, then it works. And now this is the thing, that if even you put 1 and 1 here, then let's look what happens. This is the beauty of JK flip-flop. When S and R, which we don't call it S and R any longer anymore, we call it J and Q. If J and K, if both of them are 1, let's see what happens. Okay, so I clear these.
Both of them at one is just going to flip the state of the system. Right?
Perfect. You found it. You went there, yeah. So let's see how it works. Let's say Q is, for example, 1 now, and Q bar is 0. Okay, this is our current state. Now we put 1 and 1 here. It was not valid before for SR, but for JK, I am going to show you that it is good and it works. How? Let's see. So S is 1, R is 1, Q is 1. So Q is 1. So here we have 1 for this input. And Q bar is 0. So we have 0 here. We have 0 here. Since we have 0 here, this AND gate outputs 0. This AND R is 1, and also Q is 1, and clock is 1. Let's say that we have a clock, so the output will become 1. So if you look at this, it is the situation of R as a 1, S as a 0 now. What does it do? It resets. So we will have a 0 here and 1 here with this situation. And in the next clock cycle, in the next half of the clock cycle, when clock becomes 1, then it goes outside. So the Q becomes 0 and Q bar becomes 1. You see, when both of them, J and K, are 1, then Q changes from 1 to 0. Now let's look at this. Q is 0, Q bar is 1. Again, let's say that we will give the input of 1, 1 to JK. Okay, if this is the case, let us write it by green. So 0, 0, Q is 0, so Q comes here. So we have 0 here. And Q bar is 1, so we have 1 here. So this one, S is 1, so this one gets 1. But this is 0, this becomes 0. So now we have 1, 0. S is 1, R is 0. So the output will be 1. It will be set. And then in the next half of the clock cycle, it goes out. What happened? When the Q is 1, J and K both become 1, we get 0 at the output. And the state is not invalid. It still stores the state. It has a state. It has a memory, a good memory. In the SR flip-flop, SR latch, when both of them are 1, it was not good. It destroys the memory somehow. But here it works. But what it does? It toggles. It toggles the state. If the state is 1, it becomes 0. If the state is 0, it becomes 1. Okay? So we have built a JK master slave flip-flop or JK flip-flop. So the problem is still there. So we mask them. We mask set with Q bar. We mask reset with Q naught. And this will become the transition table. Again, look at it. When Q is 0, J and K both 0 means that keep the state. So when J and K are 0, it means keep a state. So if the Q is 0, Q plus is 0. If Q is 1, Q is 0. When J is 0, K is 1, it means kill. It's like reset. It means kill. So if K is 1 and J is 0, whatever Q is, the output would be 0. Look at here. So it kills the output. It resets it. If J is 1, K is 0, then it means jump. Make it high. Jump. So the output will become 1, whatever the input is. So it jumps. J1, K0. It jumps. When the last combination, when both of them are 1, it means toggle. So if the Q is 0, the Q will become 1. If the Q is 1, the next Q would become 0. So this is the transition table of JK flip-flop. So we can also write the excitation table. When J and K both are 0, then we get Q. If K is 1, J is 0, it kills it. If J is 1, it jumps it. If both of them are 1, then it complements it. It negates it. This is it. And the symbol would be this. We put this to show you that it works in the transition, but not the real edge. Just a transition to make it in the middle, and then with the next half of the clock goes output. But it is not exactly an edge. Good. Any questions? So it is JK flip-flop. Now that we have built a JK flip-flop, let's build another flip-flop. We call it T. So if you connect both of the inputs together, so J and K, both of them are either 0 or either 1. So this is not, we don't have this, we don't have that, we just have this. So the input would be either 0 or 1. If it is 0, it keeps the state. If it is 1, it toggles the state. So we have built a toggle flip-flop, a T flip-flop. A T flip-flop, so a T flip-flop clock. A T flip-flop, if we have a clock like that, and then we have, let's say we start from Q0, and Q is 0, then with the first clock comes Q toggles, so Q becomes 1. And I give a delay to that until it propagates, so a little delay. Then we have the next clock. At the next clock, it toggles again. Then we have the next clock, it toggles again. Then we have the next clock, it toggles again. What did we build? The Q What is the frequency of Q compared to clock? The frequency. The cycle time. Half. The cycle is doubled and the frequency got half. So we built a divider, a frequency divider by 2 with just a T flip-flop. Okay? So T flip-flop, if you have the input, and if, I forgot to say that here I put 1 at the T. So every time it toggles. We have 1 at the T and we have a clock. So every clock it toggles. But if you have 0 here, then it doesn't change anything. When you want to toggle, you put 1. When you don't want, you put 0. So this is the excitation table. Toggle flip-flop. We have built a toggle flip-flop, and this is the symbol. Actually, it is a JK flip-flop which connected together. The J and K connected together. During the symbols, if you see a number at the right side of a symbol, yes?
What is toggle?
Toggle? Toggle means complementing, toggling. It is 0, then it becomes 1, toggles it. Toggle means, how do I say?
To switch between two states using one action.
Yeah, it's toggle.
A little switch that turns on. You flick it up, it turns on. You flick it down, it turns off.
So either 0 or 1. If it is 0, it becomes 1. If it is 1, it becomes 0. If you see this number, you see I've written C1 here, and I've written 1J and 1K here. When I put something like that here, it means, there is a meaning here, that this one, which has the number at the right side, is controlling, and the one have the number at the left side is controlled. So you in the flip-flop, you know, the clock controls the movement of the data. So the clock is C1, but the inputs are 1J or 1K or 1T, whatever you want. So it is controlled. It is controlling, it is controlled. So this was another symbol that we will use, another notation that we will use. Okay, and we can write it like that. Okay, any questions? As I told you, with some kind of not being very precise, we can also write it as a edge triggered flip-flop, which is not exactly correct, but for the time being, it is not bad. Also, we could build a T flip-flop using the D that we had before. If you complement the output and bring it to the input, so you have built a T. You see, if you have a Q, you have Q here, and you put 1 with an XOR. When this is the T input, if T becomes 1, then this XOR complements the output and it goes inside. So if it is 1, it becomes 0. If it is 0, it becomes 1. And then when you put 0 here, then the XOR would just keeps the output, keeps the state as it was before. So even with a D flip-flop, you can build a T flip-flop. But you need this. You need to put an XOR there. Okay, now we talked about master-slave, and I've shown you that it doesn't have transparency at the whole thing, but still, I showed you if you change the input in the middle of the clock level, it's not good. It's changing. It's not. It might not be a good thing that you wanted. You wanted something that just gets the data at the beginning of the clock. That's it. And then if I change the data, it doesn't go through. This is something that we want. And this is what we call edge trigger. Edge trigger means that at the edge only, at this time. Edge, it might have some kind of small window, but it's small. At this time only gets data, and not here, not here. Just at the rising edge of the clock. This is something that we would like to have. So how do we do that? We built a edge trigger flip-flop with this circuit, this complex circuit. So let's see how does it work. Okay, start from all of D, Q, and C is 0. Okay, D is 0 with red. I put red here. Now blue. Blue 0, and clock is 0, and Q is 0. So we start with this state. Okay. Now let's say that D becomes 1. D becomes 1. Okay. D becomes 1. Going to the next color. Black. D becomes 1. Clock is still 0. So D is 1. And then what do we have here? Q is 0. So with the blue, let me write with the blue. Q is 0. No, not blue, dark blue. Is it the one? Yes, that's the one. Q is 0. Q bar is 1. This is 1. This is 1 here. Then we have 0. We have clock was 0 before, so we have 1 here. Clock is 0. Clock is 0. We have 1 here. Then clock is 0. Okay. We have 1 here. So it is 1. Okay. Now go to black. This is 1. This is 1. So it becomes 0 now. So 0 coming here. And it still remains 1. So it is still 1. And what else? What did we have? Maybe nothing. Now clock becomes 1. Clock becomes 1. This is the situation that we would like to see. When clock becomes 1, we see some kind of change. And then that's it. Even if the clock is still 1, it doesn't change. Let's see. So the clock becomes 1. Clock becomes 1. Data is still 1. So this clock becomes 1. What did we have before? We had 1 before here. Black. Black. We had 1 here. We had, what is this? This is 0, so we had 0 here. So we had 1 here. We had 1 here. Oh, it is 0 here. So we had 0 in the black. And then we had, no. What happened? Oh, okay. The clock is 1. Sorry, I had to put it a dark red. Dark red. Now clock is 1. And this was 1 before. Now this becomes 0. And when this becomes 0, Q gets 1. So at the rising edge of the clock, the Q becomes 1. That's it. And if data, now we go to data becomes 0, Q becomes 1. That data becomes 0. Nothing changed. Let's see. Because what do we have here? We have 1 here, we have 0 here, then we have 0 here, we have 1 here, we have 1 clock is 1. Clock is 1, still 1. This is the beauty. Oh, let's change the color. So D becomes 0, the clock is still 1, and then if the clock is 1, so we have 1 here, and then D is 0, so this becomes 1. This one come here, but the clock is 1, and this is coming from there. So it's still 1, 1, 1, 0. Okay, what is that? I didn't put this before in the red, in the black. Help me. Black is 0, I guess. Okay, yeah, 0. Black is 0. So even clock is it. This is still 1. This is the thing. That this is still 0. So it is still 1. And it doesn't change. It is still as it was before. So even the data becomes low during the clock cycle. The high level of the clock cycle, it doesn't change anything. Unless the clock goes low, then it comes back again high. At that time, it works. Okay? So what did we build? We built a edge-triggered flip-flop. What do we mean by edge? We mean this. Just this time works. The rest doesn't work. So if this is the clock, if this is the clock, only at this time it works. Means some kind of transition. And the thing that we have built works from 0 to 1. When the clock goes from 0 to 1. So it means that it is a rising edge. Yes?
It doesn't work for when it's 0.
No, it doesn't work. We can also do that. You see that? It doesn't work. So it is not working on the falling edge. It is working on the rising edge. Even if the clock becomes 0, Q doesn't change. But then transition occurs only on clock edge. We call this edge trigger D flip-flop. It's very good. It's actually the last, maybe the most complete flip-flop that we wanted to build. It is a D edge triggered flip-flop. We call it D register or D flip-flop. If we say D flip-flop, we mean edge triggered. If we say D latch, then we meant level triggered. So the flip-flop works either with the level, this time, which is level triggered. If it works only at the transition, then it is edge triggered. Okay, I guess we could stop here. Oh, we have time. I wish I would browse more slides. Maybe we can go to our previous slide, which we have left it. So I stop this one.